So what we're going to do today is, like, when you click on a thumbnail, we want to see a larger version of it. All right. I'm going to go back of what we did last class. We did a little setup first, and then what we're going to do is actually make a separate class just for this photo and do most of our work in this other class. All right, and do it that way. So right now, what we have when we run this is a few different ways to see photos. The Get Interesting can be run by default. Right now, I'm not running it. I commented that line out so that you have to click like search here. It'll search for dog, whatever you type in there. Or this top one here was the one we set up to show the photos in a set. So this is a particular set that I just went out there, got the set ID for, and showed. These are the two. I mean, this is the main thing from last class that we missed that I'll have to make separate screencasts on. All right. What I'll do now is I'm going to go over, after we did this, we started on the thumbnail, clicking the thumbnail, because that's what we want to do now. We want to click one of these thumbnails, and you see how it's showing the photo ID for the thumbnail? That's what we want. We're going to use that photo ID to go out and get the larger picture and show it. So first I want to show how we got the photo ID, got to that point, and then we'll move on from that one. Is that cool? Understand? All right, so the first thing we did was we made a separate thumbnail class. I'm going to turn one of these lights off. And this is when our thumbnails are being created, they're using this class, right? So this is the movie clip that wraps around our thumbnail, because the loader gets loaded into the thumbnail class. And all we did was add one thing to it, which is we added this photo ID property. And notice, unlike most of the properties that we've added in the past, this one is a public property, right? And the reason it's a public property is that in our code now, let's scroll down here. So this is all in show thumbnails. All right, so we're in show thumbnails. So in show thumbnails, and I'm actually going to go this time now that we've done this for a while, I'm going to go through and delete some of this extra stuff that we don't really need anymore. We have a big container that everything goes inside of. This is the other piece I mentioned before. If you don't call this setup grid inside of show thumbnails, then what will happen is the second time you do the search, it won't really work. All right, so you need to have the grid called in show thumbnails. But we have the loader here. The loader is what actually loads the movie in. But then we create a thumb, that's type thumbnail, that actually we put the loader inside of that, and then we put that thumb inside the container. And then we set the photo ID property to the ID of this photo. The ability to do this right here and that it works properly comes from us making a public property there. So whatever we make as a public property now, public var testing, right? So I make another one here. Now in my main, when I use something with thumbnail, I can write thumb dot, and then testing will show up as one of those properties. So that's one of the reasons we do it in a class, because then it's sort of official. It shows up in your code hints and stuff like that, and so you know what it is. And at this point, that's all we sort of needed for a thumbnail. We just needed to know. But I may give you guys a screencast where you can do all sorts of cool things with this thumbnail now. Where let's say you wanted to show the description on a rollover, like you roll over a thumbnail, you want to see the description. So I could add another one. Actually, I'll do that one. That's a better one. Description, right? So, or title, I guess it is title. It would probably be title. I'll call it photo title, since title was showing up as blue. So now I could do something like this, where I said thumb.photo title equals photos I title, right? Because title is one of the properties of the photos. I'm pretty sure it is. We'll see here. And so then I could write some code inside a thumbnail that when they roll over it, it dynamically creates a text field, pops it out, or it doesn't even have to be dynamically. If you want to go into your FLA and make a thumbnail, movie clip in there, you can do that, and you can have a text field in it. But on rollover, it could show that text field and just pop it up over the thumbnail. And you can add a lot of nice functionality to this. If you wanted, when you roll over the thumbnails, for it to have a glow effect, you could add a glow filter here. So this is the reason, and we're going to see this more in the large photo one we do. Now that this is an external class, you can do a lot of stuff with it and play with it without worrying about messing around with your code here. All this code has to do is create the thumbnail and give it some information, and it's done.
I did what you said, and I added a tween to the thumbnails. the registration point is on the upper left side. So
Mm-hmm.
when it becomes bigger, it'll become bigger from the. I want it to be in the middle. How can I make that possible?
Okay, so that's a little bit tricky. I'll give you like a 30-second thing, and then we can talk about it more later if you want. Because it's going to affect a couple pieces. It's going to affect your grid probably too, and how you lay things out in your grid. So yeah, by default, you know, your loader, if this is the loader, is going to have its registration point there, right? And by default, when you load it into your thumbnail, you leave something? Oh, no, go get it. When you have your movie clip, this thumbnail is really just a blank movie clip. It's also going to have its registration point there and load it to that. So what you can do is move the thumbnail over the loader so that it's centered on the registration point of the thumbnail. So you would change, like, so here we do, you know, thumb add child loader, and then you would do something like loader.x. Probably what you would do is subtract half, but the problem is at this point you can't subtract half because you don't know what size it is. But in our case, since we know all our thumbnails are 75 by 75, I would write like loader.x equals negative, let's see, 35 is 70, 37, something like that. There's no way to get it exactly right because it's 75, you know, and like loader.y equals negative 37. That would center now the thumbnail around, I mean the loader on the thumbnail. Then you would have to modify your grid a bit to make it place out, because if I do this, well, you'll see how it's going to change how it shows up. Right, so you see everything is offset now by 37 pixels. So I would need to move them back over 37 pixels to change that offset. But then now, if you do the scale to the thumb and not to the loader, then the picture will scale how you want it to scale. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, well, the main thing, the thing on that, okay, so that's a slightly separate question. So I'm going to delete this code, but that's like the starting point for it. You move the loader within the thumbnail for your like scale. You're like trying to scale it, right? Yeah. And so it works, and then now you just got to redo your grid. Now for your question, I think what you wanted was, the other thing to think, if you want to move them all over, and that's sort of the second part of yours, and that's your question, you know, for you it's the 37 pixels, you may have some other thing that you want to do. Just remember that in this part here, you got to reset that x position to whatever offset you did as well. Right? So when you reset the x to go back for the next row, you got to, instead of going to 0, it has to go to whatever your thing is. So in your case, actually I'll do this. It would be 37, right? Because you want it to be 37 pixels over. And then you would have to do here in the setup that you'd want to start out at 37 over there. So you'd have those two numbers the same. If you wanted, you could even make another variable called xstart or something like that, and then that would move the offset back to where you want it to be. So now the x is right, but now the y still needs to be offset properly. So then I would also move the y over, and then that would take care of that. All right, and then like you could add the code to do. For those of you guys who aren't sure what he's talking about, one quick way to do like a nice little rollover is you modify the x scale and y scale properties. And the nice thing about using scale as opposed to width and height is you can always set x scale and y scale back to 1 to get it back to whatever it was. So if you want to animate it, you can tween it up so it goes from, you know, the current 1 up to like 1.2, and it gets slightly bigger when you roll over it. And then when on the roll out, you set x scale back to 1, and it would go back to what it was. And I would do that code. That's a good candidate to do all that in here. Right, you just did like, you know, add event listener, mouse event, what is it, mouse over, oops, you know, mouse over, on over, and then, sorry, I don't know why this output is sticking around over here. Private function on over. By the way, you do notice how I just wrote add event listener? That's because we're working inside a thumbnail. We don't need to add anything in front of it. We're adding it to the thumbnail itself. So, and then remember here, let it complete the mouse event there, and it will do the import for you on the mouse event. Okay, and this will be 5 seconds. We'll be done here. So, if you're freaked out by like just writing things like X scale and Y scale without anything in front of it, you can use the this keyword. So you can also use the this keyword here. You can say this to remind you that you're adding it to that thing there. This dot X scale equals 1.3. I'm not doing the tween because it takes too long to write. I can never remember the syntax for it. Yeah, I always just take something I had before and do it. Oh, whoops, I have an error here. Oh, it's scale X, isn't it?
Yeah, scale X.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the other way around. Scale X. I've been meaning to do, and I haven't done it yet, is I want to introduce you guys to Tween Lite. It's a library for tweening, and one of the sucky things about the way ActionScript does it is if you want to tween 3 things, I want to do X scale and Y scale and do the rotation, I need 3 different tweens to do it. With Tween Lite, you can do it all in one line of code. And you can just sort of say, do this, 3 seconds, and then you set the different things. So there we go. See, so it's making them bigger, it's scaling them, and then now what I'd want is the opposite, is to scale out. So I'd add another listener to it for on the mouse out, and put that back. And so on mouse out, it would just go back to 1. And you do X scale and Y scale. Thank you. So this is kind of the nice part is like, especially once you start to like get the event listeners down and all this other stuff, you can start experimenting really fast with this, and in a few seconds like get some little effects here. Maybe I think 1.2 is too big. I could also use filters and add like a glow filter to add a glow around it, or a drop shadow, or whatever else I wanted to do to show that this was it. Just be, with these, like I always sort of say, try to be subtle, relatively subtle with them, right? This is actually not too bad. It almost makes it exactly fit inside the spaces around it. But yeah, so, and then now this is also nice because if you move to a different project where you're getting your images from maybe a local images that you're just using an array or XML to store, you could still use this thumbnail class as it is, right? You could take out the photo ID and photo title if you didn't need them, but you can use the mouse over and mouse out stuff as it is. So that's a good, quick way to see the sort of the power of using these external classes. All right. So I uploaded not this version of the thumbnail, but the one with just photo ID in it, and this FLA, which has this large photo piece in it here. All right, which actually I may modify a little bit as we go, but we'll see. And what we want to do now is get something that writes an image and data into this large photo when we click on the thumbnail. And I just want to double check to see so you guys see what we did. So the first part of that was saving the photo ID, right? We had to save that with each photo. What I'll do is I'll post back this thumbnail.as I just made. I'll post that up later. So if you guys were interested in that, remind me, and then don't think about it now so you can focus on the other stuff that we have to do. All right, I'll put that AS up. Okay, this next piece is we added this event listener. So this is the other thing we added so that when they click on the thumb, we respond to it, right? So we have an event listener on the thumbnail as well. So those are the 2 things we added in the show thumbnails. And then, of course, in addition to that, so this and that, in addition to that, what we needed to add is this on-click thumb handler. All right? So that's the 3rd thing that we added. I can't quite fit it all there. I'm just going to hide some of this stuff. Here we go. So these are the three things that we added at the end of last class. Photo ID, event listener, and the on-click thumb one. And all we used was, remember, e.currentTarget always takes you back to whatever it was that you added the event listener to. In this case, thumb. So to get this photo ID back, I can write e.currentTarget, which gets me the thumb, and then photo ID, just like .photo ID like I did there. And this is part of that pass by reference thing that sort of is like hard to understand a little bit at first, but once you understand that e.currentTarget is now the exact same thing as thumb, they're pointing to the same thing, and you can use all the properties of thumb you can use with e.currentTarget. And so that makes this nice and flexible so that this one handler can work for all the 100 or however many different thumbs it is that we have on there. All right? But what I'm going to do is I started to show Flickr.photos get info here. I'm actually going to change that up a little bit because I realized in between the classes that it's better to show you guys how to manage this almost all in the large photo, making a separate class for it, than in dealing with stuff here. All right, and we can like change how we do our handlers and a few other things. So that's what this class is going to be about. It's going to take a little while to get all these pieces in place, but I think we can do it by 7:30. All right. I kind of went very quickly through all that stuff. I'm going to slow down a bit now, but any questions before I start again? Yeah. Nope, I'm going to upload it later. I don't want you to think about it anymore. All right? Forget about it. You'll be able to watch the screencast, hopefully, but also get the file and see it there. The other main things just to remember here, I'll show you now, are you have to, if you're going to do the scale thing, you have to change the X and Y of the loader to be 37 pixels offset so it's in the middle. Otherwise, what will happen is it will scale from the point out, which is probably not what you want. That's one thing that we did. The other thing that we added was we changed the initial X position and Y position to 37 as well. So we did negative 37 on the loader and then positive 37 on the X and Y. And then I'll give you this class. I'll upload that. All right. So the what we want to do now is I'm going to go to the library here. In large photo, we want to actually create a class, a largephoto.as class. All right. So if you go in the library to something that has a linkage name and right-click on it, there's a edit class link you can get to. So you go to the library, and if, by the way, if you don't have this FLA or you were behind or something, I uploaded this FLA to course site so you can download it and work with the same one. Sorry? Yes. Are you in IE? Move to a different browser. Sorry. IE doesn't know how to deal with FLA files. It tries to zip them and then it corrupts them. It doesn't just download the file. I don't know why. I can't. That's sorry. Like, it's just a bug with IE, at least on in this classroom. Yeah. All right. So go to there. Click Edit Class. And then you should get this. So it'll start. I mean, you could do this by yourself, but the problem is if you just make a new class, it won't have the extends movie clip on it, and it won't import the movie clip. All right. So you could just go to File, New, ActionScript 3.0 class, but it wouldn't necessarily have all that stuff. Then make sure you save it so it's in the same place. So we have our large photo .as file. This is something that happens occasionally with Flash. I forget how to fix it. Let me just put it in a different location and move it. Okay. Occasionally this happens. I don't know why. Flash won't let you save it in the folder you're in. So one way I've been dealing with that is save it in a different folder and then move it back into the proper folder. Okay. Okay.
So if you're saving it, just click on the folder so it knows you're in the.
Oh, it does that. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're going to write some code for this. But what we're going to do is here's basically what we want to do. So while you guys are like downloading the files and getting this ready, is we want the large photo to handle all the Flickr stuff itself. We're just gonna give it a photo ID, and then it's gonna go and download, go to Flickr, get the information for that photo, and then put the title in and all that other stuff, and use the loader and things too. So we'll need a few more import stuff as we do it. So we're gonna import all the Flickr classes here as well, so that we can work with Flickr inside a large photo. There's other ways you could do this where you keep the Flickr classes in main and just first get info on the photo and then pass it to large photo, but I thought this one would be good to help minimize how much code we have to write inside of our main.as. So we're putting most of it here. So I'm going to write the Flickr imports here. And actually, instead of typing them out, just go to main and just copy them from that. Those 3 lines. All right? I'll put it here and then leave it so you guys have a second to do it. So we're going to import all those there. And then the other thing that I often import too, just because I'm a little bit lazy and I know you usually need them and you never know which ones you might need, I often do the import of the events with the asterisks like that. The other ones should import as we're typing our code, but those are some ones that I just sort of put up there. All right, and then now what we're going to need a few properties as well. And there's 2 that I know right away that 3 actually that I can copy out of main that I'll just use in the same way to make it easier mentally and that. So I need the API key and the Flickr service, right? So we need that, those 2. So we're going in our properties here. And then the other one that we'll want to take out of there, and I'll just show this and then I'll pause for a second, is, oh no, we don't have that as a property in that case. All right, I'll leave this as it is and let you guys get that. So API and our service, and then the rest of them I'll do as we need it. Okay, so I forgot we didn't use that as a property. I'll do those. Okay. Oh, and if you did download my FLA, oh no, never mind. If you get this done early, think about there's a couple more things we're going to need as we go through here. And so this is a good practice for you. It's like thinking through your own code. What do we need to do with this class? What are some of the other pieces that we might need or we might think about in terms of properties? And what is this class doing and what might we need to do? Things like that. Right. Someone, raise your hand now if you're not caught up to us yet, because I want to sort of use this time to get people caught up a bit. And Anybody else? Oh, so here, you download the picture. It's not you can't have it. Oh, you do have a large picture. So we wanted to have a blue. So what is something like that? So we did it. So we did it. We have it on the line, right? And they go to the photo. All right, so yeah. Okay, so what we want is at the point when let's go back to our main here for a second. So here is our click thumb. So this e.currentTarget.photoID, this is essentially we want to be able to pass this over to our large image and tell it to load that information up for that photo. All right. So I have to make a new large photo object, obviously, to get it out there, and add it to the stage, and then give it this information. So let's see, make sure I'm being consistent here. So instead of this, I'm going to actually comment this out here. Now, at this point, it's up to you. I'm going to make a dynamic large photo each time, and what that allows for is, if I click 5 thumbnails, each of those photos will show up and as separate photos. That could be clicked and moved around. The other option is you might only ever want to have one big photo showing, and you might make large photo a property, define it as a property, and then when someone clicks another thumbnail, it'll load a new photo into that large photo. There's different considerations you have to take. If you're doing it as a property, you'll have to add a few things that we're not adding, where you erase anything that happened to be there before. Because otherwise what happens is, let's say you load an image that has a description, but then the next one doesn't. That description will stay around from the previous image on the image that comes after it and stuff like that. So I'm going to do it now as a dynamic one, where each like time you click a thumbnail, you get a new large photo. And it's really a little bit up to you. Sometimes it depends on what you're doing and so forth. So we're going to create a new var called, I'm just going to call it photo. And as type, we're going to do large photo, which should now show up as you're typing your data types in there. Right? Since we saved it as a separate AS file, it should show up. All right? And now we somehow want to get our photo ID into the large photo. Right? Any ideas on how to do that? All right, so here's a few different ways. one way, which I'm not going to do right now, because I'm gonna try to do this in a way that's somewhat flexible. If you guys decide you want to do this dynamically or not, this will be a little more flexible towards that. One is you can actually change your constructor function to like pass in a photo ID in the constructor function, but that one doesn't lend itself towards having one photo that you keep loading new things into. Another way is to make a public property, an ID property, and you pass it in there, but then that doesn't tell it to do anything with it. That just sets an ID for it. So what I'm going to opt for is sort of a third one, which is I want to have a function in large photo that goes and gets the photo, right? So let me put some comments in here, and class and package. All right, so I'm going to scroll past this. This is the imports that we did. I think everyone's there now. And so here's our constructor function, which we don't have anything in right now, but we will in a second, and photo function. And so we're going to put a function in here, public function. I'm going to call it load photo. And in that, we're going to be able to pass in a photo ID. All right, so I'm going to call it PID as a string, which is our photo ID. You could also write out the words photo ID, whatever you want to write for that variable. That's yours to name how you want. All right. And here, in this one, is where we're going to call what we were going to do before in main. So here in main, where we did flickr.photos.getInfo, that's what we want to do here. All right, but instead of e.currentTarget photo ID, now we get to just use that PID that they're passing in. Okay, so we're gonna work on this. Yes, question. Okay, so what we haven't done yet, which you may be asking, is we need to add some more code to our constructor to actually create our Flickr object and a few other things, which we're going to copy as well from our main. Since we already did it well in main, we're just going to have it here again. So this is where the two meet. And now this is public, and it's important that this is public, all right, for what I'm going to show you in the next step. So I wanted to get this out of the way so that we don't have anything more to do for a second inside of the main. I want to finish up main for a second and then focus on the load large photo class. But this is public so that here we can now write photo dot, and you should get load photo coming in there. So you should see it, and it should even tell you that it comes with an PID property that's a string, and then you can pass in the e.currentTarget.photo ID. And then we would also have to, which I'm just going to do now quickly, add it to the stage. There. So this is the extent of what we're going to do for now inside of main. I'm going to leave it up, make sure everyone gets that, and then we'll go back to large photo and finish work in large photo. And we'll have a couple more things we might do in here, but for a while we're not going to need to come back. So this is nice. It's like 3 lines of code in the main to sort of add this photo for now, and then we're gonna have a whole bunch of other lines of code in large photo. But now we're not, main is you don't want it to get too long. In other words, you can have like a 700 line, main if you start put everything in it. But if you start using these external classes, you'll reduce the amount of size of main, and you'll make your code more portable to other projects too. So this right now are the 3 important things to have inside of your onClick thing, and we're in main right now. As usual, if you have questions, oh yeah, because you have one program that you have many questions. That's why you find it here, and you can use it, but it's also, if you want, you can actually go if you actually run this and click it now, you'll get an error because that load photo isn't quite set up right. But it's okay. You'll get some active copy of the wall after. Yeah, I click. Oh yeah, you didn't. Yeah, you didn't put in that. That's okay. That's fine. If you actually put in that, then. What do I? No, error now. Yeah, you can do that. Like I said, it'll probably give you an error. Oh, I did negative 37 on the loader, and then on the X cause and Y cause, we did negative 37. So in other words, what's happening is, like, it's a thing within a thing. So this is the thumbnail, this is the loader. We did the loader up this way, so that the center of the loader would be in the registration of the movie clip. So that pushed it off by 37 pixels, that was negative and negative. We have to do on the X cause and Y cause positive 37 both ways.
But yeah, I didn't notice that. I feel like if it was a poem, that's what CGI is saying about that. But that's not what poem is supposed to look like. That didn't look like it's still yes. I didn't like everything. Look, it's still doing this kind of. Yeah, because he didn't have okay. Right between your nose and one. You have to keep that one. No, you don't have to worry about it. Putting it from your nose. And just get rid of this. No, it's just this. You just don't move it. With the white version. Right, this. We're talking about this. Comma. And then comma. No, quotation mark. I didn't know. Okay. One. 1.1. You always start. This is the first part which is the video. And then comma. Oh, it's no, I'm sorry. So the first one is 1 because it's originally on 1. The first one, yeah, the future reference. Yeah, the future reference. The first one is the original. And the second one is the what you want it to become. It doesn't have to be together. It could be mouse it, like move it. And then the next is So it was slow to me. So since I think one is 1 second, so I usually put like 1 so it goes faster. Just basically and then now it's really forward. One whole line. And change between and make it scale line. Keep it in there. Copy the whole thing. Yeah. No, the whole thing. Because this is when it's over. Then we can bring it. And that will be and now make when it's over, it becomes bigger. So here, already this is the low side is going to become so here you put 1.1. If that's the size it's going to become, you go 1.1. Let me show you one. Do that as one. How this part? It's easier to understand when it's like real estate application. Oh, it's because we know that it's
Now you can put photo up. Oh, yeah. Okay, so there's one more thing we got to get out of here, out of main, before we move over, which is we want to copy the Flickr stuff, because now when we're going to go over and start dealing with Flickr and large photo, I just might as well copy what I have here. You don't have to, you can type it in. Just this here, right? We're going to create our Flickr service thing. We got to do that here. And then we're going to add an event listener, but I don't think we have the event listener to copy. So I'm just copying that. If you don't want to, you can type it in here as well. So we're moving now from main. So we did the main part, and I'll just double check you guys got all that. So that on our click thumb, we create a new photo, a large photo. We call the load photo method, and we also add it to the stage. And then here, now we're going to deal with managing this load photo and what comes after that. So first, we have to actually have a Flickr variable to work with. At this point, if you save this and run it, it should run, but nothing happens besides the large photo comes up and then there's no photo in it. So I should now be able to click this and the large photo pops up. It's not in the right place exactly, so we'll have to deal with that eventually, but I want to at least get this photo to load and then we can go and look at it. If you want to, if on the side, you just go into main and just fiddle with the location of it. All right. You can just do photo dot x equals whatever it is. I don't know. Probably 50 and something like that. The other way to do it would be to go into your library here. And now that we're going to load this all as a separate class to move this registration point back up to the top left. So remember, like I said, either you're going to have to change the main photo or the loader. One of the two you have to change. The registration point should either be here, which means you don't have to change the loader when we load it, or here, which means you wouldn't have to do what we're doing right now with photo. And actually, you can look here to see how much we need to move it. It looks like it's about 160 over on the x coordinate and about 55 on the y. So just modify those two things, as needed for your however you did your movie, or however you'll do your own thing, and that way you'll get it'll show up in the place you want it to show up. All right, I guess I moved it down too much. Okay. So does that make sense? I'm going to move off now to the. I want to work in large photo. Yeah.
Sorry,
Sure.
I
Okay, so just make sure, I'm going to show this for about another 30 seconds, and then we'll go in and we'll deal with all the large photo stuff. So all I added now is I just added a X and Y, move that around to position large photo however you want to do it on the stage. And if you don't get it perfect, it's okay. You can fiddle with that later. Alright, so this is what you needed to add here to not get the all object reference. Right, so now I'm going to go back to large photo, and this is the next thing that we added to large photo. So we added, make sure we create a new Flickr API inside the constructor code. And that's what will help it so that when you load it now, you won't get any, you shouldn't get any errors. We still don't have the image loaded yet, but we can at least click our thumbnail and have it pop up. Yes. Okay, I'll come and help. So, for those of you who get this down and it's working, what you can look at next is we're making a method call here, and remember, method calls, here's how it works, right? You make a method call, it goes out to Flickr, Flickr gives a response, that triggers an event, and then we need a handler. So you're going to need to write an event listener to listen for that event coming back, and the handler to deal with it. So if you can figure that out, that's something you can work on while I'm coming on and helping people. We need to add in here that event listener. We need to add that in with the Flickr, right? Flickr.something.event listener. And I told you guys earlier how you can look at this to help you figure out how to write the event listener. And then just make any event handler, whatever name you want to give it, you'll make an event handler. Well, no one will fill in with Anybody else? Any questions? Oh yeah, you just go into the go to the and double click it, and then go to your timeline, add a new layer, and then add a new one. Then you click the square tool, and then make the color white or the color you want, and then hit square. Whatever you want. While it's photos loading? Yeah. Yeah, you could do that. Or you could have some kind of like, loading progress bar or whatever too. You would put it in large photo. The loader has a lot of properties when you use the loader when you start loading the image. It has the bytes loaded and stuff like that. So what you do is as soon as you call load, the easiest way is as soon as you call load, you set your animation going. And then when you listen to the loaded, like you did for the thumbnail, when you get that, you stop it. If you want it to actually show the exact progress, you have to use the property. You just want to spin. I'm looking Alright, so let's see, where are we at again? Alright, so we need our event listener and handler for the get info. Right? So let's write our listener here. And just to remind you, I'll show you how you kind of do this. So if you look back at main, you don't need to go back yourself. All our event listeners are Flickr result event as a data type when we're listening for Flickr. So we can start with that. Flickr add event listener, Flickr result event dot, and then here it's photos dot get info. It's going to be photos underscore get underscore info. So it changes the dot to an underscore, and if there's two words with the capitals, it puts underscores there. So you can start typing it out. Photos underscore get underscore info. You should be able to see it. And if you want to just use your arrows to scroll down, you can too. But that's how they sort of relate to each other. Is that this one becomes the first word, and then the dot becomes the underscore, and then the get is the next word, and then info is another word, like that. So if you're, when you make a method call, if you're trying to figure out how to write the listener for it, that's kind of the general pattern that they go on. And then we got to make up a handler. Anyone have any ideas on what? On get info, on get photo get info, whatever you want. Something simple that's related to it here. You might actually write photos get info too, or like that. I'm gonna put the photo in there, just because there's other ones that could have get info, I think, and so this is just a way to make sure you don't get confused as to what's what. And then we'll write that handler. Like any other handler, we write, And so that's like I always tell everyone, look at the pattern. It's hard to memorize all the code, but you can start to remember the patterns of how listeners and handlers are related and stuff like that. That helps you remember how to do things. And that's our pattern we've had before. It's always private function. It doesn't have to be private, but for handlers it almost always is. The on photos get info comes from that. The Flickr result event is the data type, and you always have your little void at the end. Alright, so there's a few ways to handle this, but one of the things I'm going to do is to make a property of the class that's going to hold all the photo info for this. Because you get that back from Flickr, there's a lot of info there, and I might want to use it in different ways in different handlers. So what I'm going to do is create a property that'll have all my photo info that I can just refer to relatively easily. So up here, before we move on, I'm going to make a variable for photo. And the type is going to be photo, which is one of the Flickr data types. Right? Don't finish it. Right? Remember, once you get to the FOT, don't finish the O. That way, when you hit enter, it should make sure you have an import there. Now, in our case, since it's a Flickr one, it's already imported. But just as a general thing to remember on this stuff, on that. The other thing is that we're going to get our just for this, in this instance, I'm going to make loader a property too. We only need one loader for this. We're not loading multiple images. So while I'm at it, I'm going to make a loader property. And that one will need to have an import for it, since we didn't have an import yet. So on the loader, make sure you either autocomplete or Flickr, if Flash is acting up on you, make sure you add this import statement as well. And I'll pause here for a second. So we have that import, which could be automatically loaded based on that there, but if it's not, make sure you have those things there. And I'm going to see if I can show most of this all at once. I can't, so I guess I just have to do it. So we added our two properties here, and then just make sure that your import comes into play as well. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to, at this point we have all the information. I'm going to set the photo object, and then I'm going to make probably a separate function called show photo that's going to handle all the stuff we need to show photo. And so I'll handle that separately. Usually I like to do all these things in separate functions, that way, because sometimes later on you need to change the order you do things, or you want to do something again. And if you have different things broken up into functions, it becomes easier to reconfigure your code. When everything's in like one big thing, like all in the constructor function, it gets harder to manage change. All right, is everyone good with these two properties? All right, so here's how we're going to handle it. On this photos get info, I'm going to say photo equals e dot data dot photo. All right. Save the photo info into the photo property. And then the next line I'm going to call show photo. All right, and we have to make up that function. Let's scroll up for you here a little bit. And so we're going to do a few things here that I'm going to make comments for. If you want to try it yourself, you can. Show the title, show the description, load in the photo itself. So for now, those are the three things that we're going to do. So these are the two things that we just added, and then this one. All right, anybody else have a question on this before we move on? So, this actually, some of this is going to be pretty easy, but we got to remember what we have in our actual little movie clip here. So remember, this is our movie clip that now we're loading this stuff into. So I got to go to my properties here. This is called title_txt, and this is description_txt. So in that, these are the first two things. So we want to set title_txt. I can just refer to it like that because this class is attached to that movie clip. So we'll set the text equal to, anyone have any idea what this is going to be here? Right, photo dot ID, and it should now because we typed photo as a as the photo type, it should show it for us in there, and this will be description txt.text photo. Right, when I write photo here, remember I'm using that property that I set up there. So we set the property, and so now we're using it here and here. So photo dot, and there is a description as well. Right, and if you even just run that part of it, which the next part we have to load our photo, we have a few more lines of code, but you might want to just do those two, make sure they run, and that it's showing okay. Now remember, not every photo has a description, so you may or may not get it there. But oh, there we go. We do have a odd title. It's a number and a description as well, which actually makes me realize I should probably change the word title and description to be bold or something and differentiate them. But I said before, and I want to make sure I say it again, I only wrote those here to help us remember what we're doing. In your own one, like sometimes if you look at Flickr itself, it just like makes the title bold and then the description has smaller text under it, so you don't even have to say this is title, this is description. It's kind of self-explanatory. You could do something like that in your own project as well, or if you want, you could decide title is going to be up here, really big, and description is over to the side, or maybe you're going to put space at the bottom, however you want to do it. Is there a question? Oh, I put ID? Oh, you're right, I did, I put ID. Duh. You're right. So there we go. So now we have our picture of sausage. Not much of a better title for a dog picture either. But. The other thing that I'm going to hope to get to, maybe not today, but we might be able to just get it at the end, is we want a close button here where we can click it and close this out so that we can go see our thumbnails again. Alright, so those two are relatively simple. Photo.title, photo.description. Now to load it, we need to create the loader stuff. And if you want, you can copy this from the thumbnail one that we did, but it's the same basic idea. So we're going to make a new URL variable. That's a string. And this is where we use the Stein Flickr thing, right? Stein _ Flickr _ utils. Dot get photo URL, right? And then they want the server. And this is actually really nice now because all of these things that they're looking for are just properties of the photo object. So they want server, you write photo dot server. And then it's ID, so it's photo dot ID. And then the next one is secret, photo dot secret. And then the size, that depends on what you want. I'm going to do the one we budgeted for. We did a 500 by 500 square. That's medium 500. There's also a medium 600, a large, a small. If you go onto course sites, in the Flickr section, it tells you what all those different sizes actually are. All right, if you forget. It's on course sites under Flickr. If you go Flickr image sizes, it tells you here. That's what they are. So we're doing medium 500, and you would just put whatever one of these you want in the quotes. and that comes out of Stein Flickr utils. So that's our URL, and then we're going to load that. So loader, load, new URL request. Let it finish that. If you don't let it finish it, you have to make sure that you add your import for the Flash URL request there. Right? So you should double check and make sure that happens. It's flash.net, that URL request. And then our URL variable is what we use there. And make sure you add the two closing ones, close the URL request and close the load method. Alright, and then I'm going to do add child loader. And we should finally get, hopefully, no, I have an error here. What did I do wrong? Turn on access property method of null object reference. Show photo. Okay. Where did I put? Oh, I didn't ever create loader. Sorry, that's my mistake. There is no loader to do right now. If you want, you can just do it up here if you want. I forgot that. So we never said loader equals new loader. We never did it. You can do it up here. There's no, if you want to reuse this one, then you should do it up here instead of doing it down every time they click on it. Every time it shows the photo. So I apologize. So you have to add that piece in. And let me make sure that that's all I needed. Yeah, there we go. Alright, and so then the next part we'll just need is a close button, and we'll be most of the way there towards the large photo. There's other things you'll be able to do, like if you want to show, you know, EXIF information or comments and other stuff like that, you can then work with large photo to add those in. And that's one of the reasons I want to get you guys as soon as possible to let me know what you want to do, so I know like sort of what other little tutorials to help you guys out with. So making sure you have a new loader somewhere. I'm going to scroll down, back down to here. This is show photo, and these are the things. So we set the title text, the description text, and then we loaded the image itself. And if you get done with that quickly in the next couple minutes, we're going to create a close button and add it to the large photo in our library. So you might want to do that. And then we're going to add some code for the close button. If you wanted to do an animation while it was loading, like the simplest one, if you have just like a turning wheel, here you would like put that on screen. Then you would add the event listener to the loader, content loader info, like we did on the thumbnail, and then you just take it off the screen. So in the thumbnail, if you go back to the main, we added an event listener to loader.content loader info. Remember, every time we loaded a thumbnail, we needed to refresh the scroll pane. Right, so you do the same similar thing here, except that when that event happened, instead of refreshing the scroll pane, you just remove your spinning wheel or whatever it is. So here you do add child, spinning wheel, and then when the photo loaded, you do remove child. Although you can see from here, it loads pretty quickly, so there's not a lot of lag.
No, I was talking about when you actually click a photo, when you see the actual.
Oh, you want the whole thing like happening?
Like just like a small thing like a passing.
Right. Yeah, so you actually might want to still wait for it's loading.
did it in the large building, you can have it in one of those. Get into the new building.
Yeah, well, you had a different setting on yours, then that would be why. So, first I would always look at where you set up. You were trying to do the thing where you had to put it offset.
The background is gray, so it should be white.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not based on the.
I mean, that's totally good. I feel like there's one part that's missing, but somehow, you can ask me. Somehow, that's right. We'll do it right. Yeah, we can do it in feature plus. You know, you have to turn on the it's still living in place.
Anybody else question? All right, so I'm going to try to, in 13 minutes here, do our close button. All right, first, I'm going to do a very quick close. I'm going back to my FLA. I'm just going to use the text tool. There we go. Make sure it is set to static text. And I'll pick some kind of font, that's big. Like, if you have it, what are some good ones for here? Arial actually is not bad. Arial Black is a pretty big, thick one. And you do uppercase. And there's a few other ones, but you just make an X. Doesn't really matter. I'm doing it here like this. And then convert that to a symbol. And I'm going to call it close button. And make sure you do the other next step, which everyone always forgets, which is give it an instance name. Close _btn is what I'm doing. So I just made a X, convert it to a movie clip. You can convert it to a button too, by the way. Sorry, I should have probably converted to a button and not a movie clip. It's easy to do nice rollovers visually without writing code when you make it a button. And then the main thing is that you have an instance name of close _btn or whatever you want to call it. And you could write the word close. You can do whatever you want for it. You could put a circle around it, or make it a different color. I'm just trying to go quickly here. All right, so I'm going to assume that most of you guys can make something, even if it's not an X, that has the instance name of close button, and I'm going to move on. And then if you got confused there somehow, I'll help you while I'm coming around. So in this case, it's actually kind of hard to close something from within itself. And sometimes you don't always want to because you don't know what it's going to be inside of. You could change things around. So I usually try to add the listeners that actually remove something from the stage in the main, or whatever is calling it, whatever created the object. So I'm going to add the close from the main. I'm going to go back to main for the close. And I'm going to go back to our click thumbnail. And so we're just going to add our event listener here for that close button. If I was doing this in a more complicated way that I don't have time to show you guys today, I might make a listener for it in the close button, and then just have a custom event that it would trigger. But I haven't had time to show you guys custom events yet. Actually, I want to, but so I have to do photo.close_button, right? Because the close button is inside of the photo, the large photo thing, and then it's just our normal mouse event. I'm calling it on close photo. You could call it on click close. I just call it close photo in case there's other things I want to close out, like maybe help or something like that. So we're adding that in, and then we'll add in the handler for it, which is pretty easy. For now, I'm just doing a remove child on the e.currentTarget. .parent. So that's the only little trick there. The target of the event is the close button. I don't want to remove the close button. I want to remove the whole object, so I can do remove child on that. I can do current target.parent. So photo is the parent of close button, so we can do it there. And so that should, let me just make sure I didn't add any errors in my code here, and then I'll leave it up. There we have it, and then it should close out, and now I can click on other stuff. And you see here how it goes. Like, none of them are going to be bigger than this box, but almost none of them are also going to fit fully inside the box, and that's kind of how it works out.
Is there a way to make it so it fits in perfect balance?
Well, if you want to, this one just happened to be that way because they put a black borders on the top and the bottom. If you wanted to center it like this, you could write some code to do that. So you would always have the black bars, so to speak. The other way to do it, obviously, is instead of having this black box here, just don't have anything, and then they'll just have blank space wherever that is. And if you're okay with that. Huh. All right, I'll take a look. Let me close this out so people can see it. So what I just added here was we added our event listener and our event handler to close it out. Oh, that's fine. Good. That's why what I do to get away from ever actually doing that is all my that way even if you decide to have one, that's basically the same. No, but I'm gonna have you put something there just use like a tool or something, and then click on so move to the X and the Y here so that you set it. Sometimes it has, depends like the image is different. It feels like it's going to be this spot, but actually it's in the same spot. Right.
If it was in the center, then look at all those things.
So what you have to do, so if you want to actually center this within your page, then you have to add a network input when it's loaded, and then that thing will know that it's in place. So based on that, then you can actually center it.
How would I know the difference in how you're comparing to that? It's each image I put in the center.
Right, but the loader knows that. And the loader object,
Yeah.
and this is loading the image also keeps the details. But it doesn't know it until it's done loading. So this loader will know that this is
So you should add a network to the loader.
we have to do loaders up. Go to your main. So in your so thumbnail. You had to, this is where you have to help. That's exactly. So, I mean, you can copy that. That's the same listening inside it. Not there. Yeah. That's the listening to it.
So this like send out here.
Yeah, you're gonna put it inside it. Yeah, like it. So not put it. Well, actually, to load the copy, you can put it in there. And then you probably change the content. If anybody else has questions, I can stick around here and answer them. I'm going to stop the recording now. So this gets you to the point now where you have thumbnails, then you have a large photo, and for you it's about figuring out what photos you're going to do, and a couple, I want you to pick out like a little bit more data to show for the photo, whether you want to try to show the simpler things like the tags, that's just an array that you have to loop through and show, or the more complicated things like trying to show comments or other things like that. And I'm going to try to do some screencasts around some of those extras and spend most of next week just letting you guys work on it and trying to help you. All right? So have a good weekend. I'll see you guys next week.